Hello and welcome. I'm Ali Mustafa and this is Strait Talk. Formerly at odds, now partners, how the failure of the KRG referendum paved the way for Turkey and Iraq's reconciliation. Plus, is the Saudi Crown Prince's promise of reform more PR than policy? It was a relationship that just months ago was fraught with mistrust and hostility. But now Turkey and Iraq have found common ground opposing the KRG referendum and Peshmerga control over disputed areas in Iraq. That newfound cooperation was recently put on display when Turkish and Iraqi troops held joint exercises along their border. And it was there that the Kurdish regional government handed Iraqi authorities control of the crucial Ibrahim al-Khalil crossing. It's the first time Baghdad has had direct control over the area in 26 years. And that wasn't the only fallout from last month's referendum, as Omer Kablan explains.
وإلا كنا نتمنى أن نبني عراق فدرالي ديمقراطي اتحادي وهذا اللي ما حاولنا لكن فشلنا.
Masoud Barzani has stepped down as the leader of the Kurdish regional government just weeks after the northern Iraq referendum that he orchestrated backfired. It cost the KRG important allies and brought some closer together. Just a year ago, there was a large security presence around the Iraqi consulate in Istanbul over fears that the Turkish public would protest Baghdad. At the time, Turkey and the Iraqi central government were harshly criticizing each other. But now there is an atmosphere of alliance. What has changed since then? Turkey says that the Iraqi central government is its only interlocutor now. And Baghdad warmed up to Ankara in response. A contrast to previous exchanges between the two countries, like this.
تركيا مدرعة من دون موافقة الحكومة العراقية لا يعتبر مساعدة ضد الإرهاب بل هو انتهاك للسيادة العراقية.
Ya sen benim zaten muhatabım değilsin. Seviyemde değilsin. Kıratımda değilsin. Kalitemde değilsin.
To find out more on the evolving relations, I went to the Wise Men Research Center in Istanbul to meet Ali Semin, an expert on Middle East affairs.
Historically, when we look at the relations between Iraq and Turkey, it's always had its ups and downs. There are important crisis factors. One of them is the water problem. The other is the northern Iraq factor. And after Daesh, there were new factors like Turkish troops being based in Basika. Now, what is Turkey's first priority? The sovereignty of Iraq, and secondly, its own national security. And its politics today reflects this.
Last week, Iraqi Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi met Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara. Both agreed to work together to resolve mutual challenges.
Irak'taki bütün bu yıkımların olduğu bölgede küllerinden yeniden buralar ayağa kalksın. Bölgenin barışı, huzuru içinde atılması gereken adımları inşallah atacağız.
But just how far will Baghdad and Ankara's cooperation go? And can they address other regional crises united? Omar Kablan, Strait Talk.
And to discuss this further, I'm joined in the studio by Ahmed Rashdi. He's a foreign policy advisor to the Speaker of the Iraqi Parliament. And also with us is Ahmed's namesake, Ahmed Oysal. He is a professor of Middle Eastern Affairs at Istanbul University. He's also the director of the Center for Iranian Studies in Ankara. Thank you so much for both of you to fly into Istanbul and be with us here. Let's begin with you, Ahmed. You're coming from Baghdad. Masoud Barzani has resigned. He took to Twitter with this statement that I will continue to serve my people as I have been before, during and after the presidency. I am the same Masoud Barzani, the same Peshmerga. What kind of message is Masoud Barzani sending out at a time when he's stepping down?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, he's meaning that he will return as a rebel, which is also a very dangerous thing, because at the end he's saying, I will stay in power. And if you want to deny me as a president for KRG, you must know me now as one of the leader of Peshmerga, or let's say the only leader for Peshmerga, which is, I think, that's why we need to deal with the situation in a way that it will not go again as a crisis inside the KRG, because at the end, it means that all the efforts to try to managing the crisis before, it will be destroyed.
You're saying he'll emerge as a rebel. What does that mean?
That means he's going to sabotage any efforts that going to happen inside KRG or outside KRG. For instance, for the pipeline. It's easy for them to try to sabotage the pipeline that go to Turkey. It's easy for them to bomb cars against the tanks that, or let's say, all the roads to Baghdad, from Turkey to Baghdad with the trucks and so on. It means easy that he can kidnap anyone and saying that ISIS did it, or maybe the Hashid did it, or the PMF did it. So that means he's saying to us is that, yes, I'm not legal as a president, but I will do my best to stay in the scene, to be seen as a leader, and you must negotiate with me.
So what does this mean for the inner dynamics in the KRG and the Kurdish region then?
Yeah, for the Kurdish society, it means that firing up the spirit of rebelness, firing up the case of the Kurds inside the Kurdish society, which that's why I think it's very dangerous. But at the same time, we must not forget is that the first time that we have Baghdad, Ankara, Tehran assist each other to try to control what Mas'ud wants, is that, yeah, we managed to limitize the power of Mas'ud, but we won't go inside Kurdistan, which also Mas'ud, I think, urgently needs to say to the people is that, okay, we are victims now. Baghdad, Ankara, and Tehran, they are assisting each other against us.
Ahmed Oysal, Ankara has supported Masoud Barzani for a long time.
Yes.
How did this referendum go down as far as Ankara was concerned?
I think those, even though Turkey supported Barzani for a long time and the KRG region for humanitarian, for friendship and neighborhood, and Turks and Kurds are relatives. They are brothers. But at the end, he consulted with others. Those who gave him advices. They probably thought either case they would create a mess in the region. But Barzani, he overestimated his cards. He overused his cards. He also underestimated the Turkey's resentment and opposition to this crisis. He thought Turkey is also benefiting from trade and good relations with KRG, but it is a bigger threat than he thought. They don't have much problem with PKK. Of course, there is some feud between Barzani and PKK, but at the end they see each other as brothers. But it is an existential threat to Turkey as a country, and they have pan-Kurdist and other ambitions to destroy Turkey, and Turkey will not, of course, allow in either form, either in Barzani form or in the PKK form that America is supporting in northern Syria, PYD. And so they underestimated the reaction by regional countries. Of course, maybe they underestimated Iran, but they underestimated Turkey's response and underestimated the world response. Not a major country in the world accepted this referendum as a legitimate referendum. So there is so many miscalculations by the Barzani, maybe just to stay in power, and he is now gambling on chaos. They say either me or chaos. So we see this kind of attitude sometimes in the region and in other parts of the world. You also see in Catalonia and other. He also big gamble, and they hope that it works. But in international arena, gambling very seldomly works.
You were mentioning the PKK, which is a terrorist organization as far as Turkey is concerned, and its offshoots in Iraq, which Turkey had raised concerns about, especially in Sinjar and in Kandil. But there are other groups that are operating in KRG as well, such as the PUK, the main opposition group formerly led by the late Jalal Talabani. You have the Goran movement as well. So what's the calculus there then, Ahmed Rushdie?
Well, the PUK is a division. Actually, it is a division from the KDP. That means originally they are, Jalal Talabani and his followers at that time, they were with Mullah Mustafa al-Barzani. Now, and the division happened in Tehran. So it means that we have political movements inside the Kurdistan area in a way that we have the PUK, but it's not a united, we don't have united wings. We have separated one now, especially after the referendum. We have Qasrat Rasul, who's now with Mas'ud, Mullah Bakhtiyar, also with Mas'ud. Barham Saleh is in between. And we have, and maybe Qubad is also, the son of Jalal Talabani, is also in between. But we have on the other wing, we have Hiro Khan, wife of Jalal Talabani, and Baful, who's the son of Jalal Talabani, on the side that they are cooperating with Tehran and also with Baghdad. In a way or another, the Peshmerga of PUK, they retreated from Kirkuk and they gave, let's say, all the empty spaces for the Iraqi forces to enter Kirkuk and to control Kirkuk. That's why Mas'ud is actually focusing on that issue, is that the traitors of the Kurds has already existed with us. And we must not forget what's happened in Kirkuk. Now, the PUK said, okay, you must also not forget what you did when you called Saddam Hussein in 1996 and he bring his forces entering Erbil, and actually we already controlled Erbil then. With the entering of Saddam troops, we went out. So it's some sort of, there are so many political agenda inside Kurdistan. Our focus now as an Iraqi government and also an Iraqi parliament is that how to manage the inside crisis in a way not to give any chance to Mas'ud, or let's say Mas'ud Barzani, to get advantage from that. In another way is that come to Baghdad, let's negotiate and also participate in the elections in next year, which is, I think it's very dangerous thing if Mas'ud say no, we won't participate in the elections next year, which will give him some sort of support.
Inner chaos, managing inner chaos, but external opportunity as well, especially as far as this border gate is concerned between Turkey and Iraq. Are we seeing a new chapter in this relationship between Ankara and Baghdad,
yes,
Professor?
Definitely, because and cooperation will increase the ties between the two countries, and I think it's more like a normalized picture right now between Iraq and Turkey, and I think it's a good way to go. Everybody, both sides can benefit from that.
Ahmed Oysal, Ahmed Rushdie, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is also the country's defense minister, could be asserting more influence than the king. And now he's been given the job of driving social and economic change in the kingdom. He's announced a number of reforms in recent weeks, but are they more a marketing stunt than genuine policy proposals? Courtney Keeley takes a look.
We are returning to what we were before.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on stage recently at the Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh.
A country of moderate Islam that is open to all religions and to the world.
Announcing that extremism will be eradicated in Saudi Arabia.
70% of Saudi people are younger than 30 years old. And honestly, we will not waste another 30 years of our life before dealing with extremist ideas.
The 32-year-old heir to the throne also debuted a wildly ambitious economic plan, calling into question the true motivation behind the statement at an event nicknamed Davos in the Desert. His economic vision includes a $500 billion cross-border megacity on the Red Sea. Slick promotional materials called it a leading global hub that offers its inhabitants an idyllic lifestyle combined with exceptional economic prospects. It's all part of a grand plan to diversify the economy away from oil and offset the several-year plunge due to low crude prices. Crown Prince bin Salman has also said that state-run Saudi Aramco's initial public offering is on track for next year. It could be the biggest IPO in history and raise as much as $100 billion. But a recent crackdown on over a dozen prominent preachers charged with pushing an extremist agenda included popular Muslim cleric Salman al-Auda. His crime, apparently, is this tweet, posted to his more than 14 million followers, welcoming reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, a crisis in the GCC widely believed to be spearheaded by bin Salman himself. His arrest, among others, have many questioning what kind of crackdown bin Salman truly has in mind. A recent bright spot in the prince's reform plans was the royal decree that granted women the right to drive. It's set to be enacted in the new year. While the decree promises to change lifestyles for many of the more than 10 million women who live in Saudi Arabia, it also said it may help auto sales growth in a market dented by the economic fallout from weak oil prices.
That is truly wise and friendly.
Also at the summit, the newest citizen of Saudi Arabia was unveiled. Sophia, the first robot in the world to be granted citizenship of a country, doesn't cover up or have a guardian.
I want to use my artificial intelligence to help humans live a better life, like design smarter homes, build better cities of the future, etc. I will do my best to make the world a better place.
But what she does have are very big ideas, very similar to bin Salman's. Courtney Keeley, Strait Talk.
And to discuss this further, I'm joined by Wehbi Behzan. He's a professor of history at Ibn Khaldun University, and Borzu Daragahi, who is a correspondent for BuzzFeed News based in Istanbul. Let me begin with you, Borzu. Were MBS's Mohammed bin Salman's statements just lip service to potential foreign investors, or is there something going on?
Well, I don't think that they're just lip service. I think that Mohammed bin Salman represents the voice of a particularly important segment in both Saudi and Gulf in the political world there, in the cultural life there, in the social scene there. It's not maybe a majority, but he does represent a very significant portion of the people who would like to see their country become more modernized and so on. But I mean, to qualify that, and this is more the realm of academics and so on, you know, it's not so easy to just modernize a country like Saudi Arabia from below. As countries like Turkey and Egypt and Iran have discovered, modernization, giving women rights, liberalizing religion, these are you know, this is a century-long project. And if you look at Saudi society, it's very conservative, still kind of tribally based, and it takes decades of effort and sometimes a lot of reckoning, a lot of pain, a lot of internal domestic revolutions to overcome that kind of conservatism.
Just to tell our viewers on what this means, Saudi Arabia has a population of 28 million people. Half are under the age of 35. There's 12.7% unemployment, but keep in mind that 80% of their workforce is non-Saudi. 400,000 Saudis enter the labor force every year. As Borzu was saying, Professor, it's not easy, is it, to reform or change society?
Not at all. But then if there is a will, there is a way. But there is a problem too. I mean, how are they going to break this Wahhabi influence? I mean, because announcing moderate Islam in itself using Western terminology means what? Who is moderate? How do you describe moderate? Can we really be a moderate Muslim, or we just can be a Muslim? And for us, for decades, for centuries, over 1,000 years, we lived as a Muslim, nothing else. So we didn't have extremist Muslim, we didn't have radical Muslim, etc., or radical Islam. Now, in my view, if you're holding a gun and shooting someone on behalf of an ideology or a religion, you're simply a killer. You see, you cannot justify it by claiming you're doing it on the name of a any religion, not only for Islam. So that's our problem. Therefore, when you say moderate Islam, what is it? Like instead of 5 times praying 3 times? So I think they should come up much clearer than that, unless, of course, there is something else behind it, which is, in my humble opinion, probably they're referring to the difficulties they will be facing in near future with this NEOM project, because $500 billion investment, northwestern part of Saudi Arabia will be included territorially, up to Red Sea coast, and
into
then
Egypt.
Jordan, and you have Egypt. So we are not looking into like only modernizing, or rather moderating Saudi Arabia, but then what are you going to say about Jordan and Egypt?
It's an interesting question. What does modernizing or moderating Islam mean? For the Saudis, we've seen in the past few months, there have been detention of popular preachers. There's been a clampdown, or at least some people are saying that clamping down on religious police is basically a clamping down on dissent against these changes. Can you moderate Saudi Arabia?
I think that you probably can. But I think that the way to do it is not this is just my prejudice as an American. It's not some big sultan at the top ordering the people to modernize. It's to allow, maybe I sound like a sucker, it's to allow civil society, allow political parties, allow dissent, allow women to speak freely, allow people to launch magazines and newspapers and websites and blogging, to create some kind of change from within and from below.
But this change isn't necessarily from within either. We've seen recently Jared Kushner go to Riyadh and talk to the royals. How involved are the Americans in pushing for this change?
I mean, Americans have a complicated relationship with Saudi Arabia. In the past, they have not been a moderating force. If you look back in the 50s and 60s, Saudi Arabia was much more politically diverse than it is now, and largely in part to the West placing its bets on the most conservative elements in the Saudi political scene. This is the Saudi Arabia we have today.
What is Turkey's move in all of this? We've seen the Qatar crisis unfold. We've seen a Hamas reconciliation deal in Gaza.
That's right.
So what does Turkey do?
Well, I'm sure Turkey would like to be part of it, because Turkey is a serious regional power and actually wants to be more than ever involved in Middle East politics. That is like in the past, anything coming from Middle East, Turkey would turn their back. But in the last 20 years, that changed. So Turkey would like to take a part. But I think the problem, those Saudi move is that, there is a court case going on, I think now finalized and sealed, that if you in any way got damage or influence or like got hurt because of this September 11 attacks, Saudi Arabia will be responsible. You can go to court and civil cases, etc. So that automatically, in a way, puts Saudi Arabia, a country supporting terror. So now. And also Saudi Arabia's name is associated with extremism or radicalism. So in this case, it will be very, very hard for them to attract foreign investment to the region. So that move comes within that too.
Supporting terrorism, according to you, but for the Americans, the Saudis are staunch allies, especially against Iran. I'd like to bring you in here. Barzu, you wrote on July 30th an article titled "Inside Iran's Mission to Dominate the Middle East." You say that all across the Middle East, Iran's allies feel the wind is at their back. And you quote a Hezbollah commander saying that we are winning. This Hezbollah commander says, "Look who's running Lebanon, look who's controlling Sana'a and Baghdad." In a zero-sum game, if Iran is winning, who's losing?
Well, I think that to some extent the U.S. is losing. The Saudis and the coalition they lead are struggling, as we see in Yemen. They're kind of trapped in this horrific war that seems to be not going anywhere anytime soon. In Iraq, they're struggling to win influence. In Lebanon, they've lost. They were once the most powerful player in Lebanon as far as external actors, and now they've actually exited the Lebanese field as their client Saad Hariri has basically made amends with Hezbollah. So if you look at it rather empirically, it does seem like the so-called axis of resistance, which Iran has proclaimed and purports to lead, is winning ground.
So what does then Mohammed bin Salman have as putting himself up as a reformist. Does this go beyond reforms for him?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what the whole strategy is. I think that there is probably an element of public relations there. Probably some slick advisors based on K Street in Washington are suggesting that he repackages Saudi Arabia because they're losing the PR war in the US so badly as well. And not just at the expense of, not just because of Iran and the sort of moderate government in Iran and its successful marketing tactics, but even this fight they started with Qatar, it's sort of a draw as to who is considered more reprehensible in the US imagination. So they're struggling in that front.
Borzu Daragahi, Professor Wahbi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of Strait Talk with me, Ali Mustafa. If you have any comments or suggestions, do share them with us online at #StraightTalk. Until next time, take care and goodbye.